Russia's invaded Ukraine. What does this mean for the Australian property market? Does it mean interest rates are going to rise? Does it mean that the property prices are going to tank? In this video, you're going to find everything out. So keep watching. So in this video, we're going to really focus in on the economic impact the Russian war is going to have. Then we'll tie that back into the Australian property market and what's likely to happen. The first economic impact that the Russian war is going to have on the global economy is at oil exports. So let's have a look at the top 10 world exporters of oil. So we can see here that at the moment, the United Arab Emirates are the largest exporters of oil, with Saudi Arabia coming in second and the third spot coming in at Russia. And this in turn is creating a global shortage for the first time in 7 years, hitting $105 a barrel. And by watching till the end, you're going to find out how this links into the property prices and interest rates. So keep with me. The impact for Australia in particular is that because we import 90% of all our oil, it's going to affect the price at the bowser. Essentially, we're expecting that the price of fuel is going to increase to $2 a litre. And what you can see here is an average nationwide price of fuel, and that has been going up. And what we can expect is increases in everyday prices. The next economic impact Russia is going to have is their liquefied natural gas, and this has been in the media quite a lot. Currently, Russia supplies almost a third of Europe's natural gas supply. And the final impact we can expect is their wheat exports, which is accounting for about 29% of the global market. We've seen that the oil is now in short supply and potentially the wheat's in short supply, and what we can expect is that everyday items will increase in price. So at the moment, everything's pointing to increases in prices, and typically this is known as inflation. And as we can see with the International Monetary Fund, essentially inflation is a rate of increase in prices over a given period of time. And you're probably thinking, well, so what? I have to pay a little bit more for my milk and bread. Who cares? Well, it's a big deal, and it's rather alarming, because if inflation gets out of control, one of the typical monetary policies is to increase interest rates. And as a mortgage holder, that means you'll be paying a higher interest rate. And looking globally for a second, we can see that the United States of America, their inflation for the period of January 21 to January 2022 was 7.5%. Now compare that to what they were looking to achieve, and their target rate for inflation is around the 2%. So that's their goal. So they're way off it. This sounds alarming, and it is. Does this spell disaster for Australia? And we can see for the latest data that we have for Australia that the inflation has increased by 3.5%. Now comparing that to our inflation target, and Australia is looking to achieve around a 2 or 3% on average over time. This certainly doesn't mean Australia is out of the woods, because rising prices means that it can go one of two ways. First way it could go is inflation, because the cost of goods will increase as a result of all the short supplies that's happening in the global economy. Inflation would essentially mean that the Reserve Bank of Australia would have no choice but to increase interest rates, and this would be in proportion with their goal, their inflationary target. And if you hold a mortgage, one of the things you can do straight away is to look to fix your home loan interest rate. A fixed rate essentially means that if you go for a 5-year fixed rate, for example, that in the 5 years, your rate won't change. Even if the rates are increasing, you'll remain on the rate you fixed in for. Secondly, if you are renting, this too means that the prices of rent will increase as a result of inflation. Now, the second way it could go is stagflation. And there's been some talks about this, but with Australia, I think we're in a bit of a different situation. Because looking at Australia's unemployment rate, it stands at 4.2% in January 2022. And this is one of the lowest it's been since August in 2008. So I think we stand a great chance in avoiding stagflation. Stagflation is a big issue because essentially the price of goods go up and unemployment is high. This would then potentially mean that the Reserve Bank of Australia couldn't increase their interest rates to control inflation, and it becomes a spiraling out of control scenario. So it's a scenario I just don't think is going to happen in Australia with everything I'm seeing here. Okay, great. Now we've unpacked what's likely to happen with interest rates. Let's deep dive into what this is going to do to the Australian property prices. Australia's retained their AAA credit rating, which is an incredible advantage to attracting investors to Australia. Before we get ahead of ourselves, what is a AAA rating? Essentially, it's an independent assessment of a credit worthiness of a country or sovereign entity, and it gives investors insights on the level of risk associated with investing in debt of a particular country. All this means is that at a time of war, Australia is one of very few countries where investors can feel very safe in parking their money. And looking at other countries and their ratings, you can see that there's very few outside of Europe that are AAA. And even as we look at the United States, they're not even AAA. So for Australia, this puts us in a fantastic position. With Australia being so far away from the Eurozone and isolated, it means that for investors outside of Australia, it's a logical choice for those that are looking to remove their money from that conflict zone and looking at somewhere safe to park it. Personally, I think Australia is well positioned for a variety of reasons. Firstly, we now have our borders reopened, which welcomes back international travel. With us being so isolated and having a AAA rating, furthermore with property prices, it's all about the long game. What we can see here is on the screen, we've got real median house prices since the 1950s, almost 50 years worth of data. And you can see that if you hold property for decades, that you're very rarely going to lose out. Australia really is one of the lucky countries. And there you have it. Here at Hunter Galloway, we get home loans approved. So if you're looking for a mortgage broker and live in Australia, you can use our service for free. Simply contact us on 1300 088 065 or visit us on our website. We'd love to help at huntergalloway.com.au. Until next time, I'll catch you then.